y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kiera. If you're new here, if you're a returning subscriber, hey boo. So as you could tell from the title, today will be a question and answer video about the lifestyle of being a flight attendant, the pay, and much more. I opened up my Instagram a couple weeks ago to allow you guys to give me some of your questions that you had as far as being a flight attendant. And so today we're going to answer some of those questions. This will be a part 1. I will be continuing with a part 2 pretty soon. So if all of your questions are not answered in this video, feel free to put those questions in the comments and then I'll make sure that I answer them in the part 2. So let's get started. I have all the questions here on my phone, so you'll see me glance down on my phone. So the first question is it hard being away from your family? I think that just naturally, yeah, if you have a pretty close-knit, tight family, then it probably is hard to be away from your family. If you're one of those people who is used to being alone, who likes to be alone, as I do myself, then it might not be as hard for you, but I just feel like that's just like a relative type of question. For me, yeah, when I first started, the first year or so was pretty hard for me because I was working a lot. I worked maybe 6 days in a row and then have maybe 3 or 4 days at home. Sometimes you're working 3-day trips and then come home for 2 days or 1 day. So when I first started, I was commuting. So that can also have a big impact on how often you see your family and when you're home, but we'll get into that later. Next question, is it hard to have a relationship or date? Again, I think this is a relative question. For me, I don't actually think that long-distance relationships are hard. To me, they are not hard. I think a relationship is easy as hard as you want it to be, for the most part. So I've never had any problems dating and being a flight attendant. I also have a lot of friends who are flight attendants who found their spouse while they were working, or who have good support systems and were able to adapt to the lifestyle of being a flight attendant. So I think that if you have a partner who is willing to put in the effort, then I don't think that it would be hard. I don't think that your problems in your relationship or your problems in dating would necessarily come straight from being a flight attendant, if that makes sense. Do your ears still pop? I get this question a lot. I know when I first started, of course, when you first start out, your ears might pop, but I can't tell you the last time my ears popped, so I have to say no. But I've also been flying for about 7 years. But again, I can't tell you when the last time my ears popped. Now, if you have we all get like sinus infections or that cold, seasonal colds and like that, then your ears might ache and things like that, but that's not necessarily just because you're on a plane. That's more so due to your illness. But for me, I can't remember the last time my ears popped. Is it hard to get holidays off? Yes. When you first start, it is hard to get holidays off. I want to say the first year, I don't think I had any holidays off, honestly, to think about it. Maybe had Christmas Eve off, and that was just by the luck of the draw. Like, somebody picked up a trip that I actually was supposed to work. So once you get to a certain seniority, everything is based on seniority in this job. So I will say yes, it's hard to get the holidays off when you first start out, depending on your base. That could be the first year, the first 2 years, the first 3 years, 4 years, that you would have to wait before you would have those holidays off, just off rip. And that means, when I say off rip, I mean like you would have those holidays off when your schedule come out. You bid for those days to have those days off, those holidays off, and then your schedule comes out and you do have those days off. I'm based in Detroit, so I would say between year maybe 3 or 4 that you can probably hold Thanksgiving off, and then so on and so forth as you get more seniority. And I know it sounds probably crazy to be like, oh my God, it's gonna take so long for me to be able to get a holiday off. These years go by so fast. There's no way that I could sit here and tell you that it feels like I have been a flight attendant for 7 years. It does not feel like 7 years at all. So I would say don't worry too much about, it taking a while to get your seniority and things like that, I just wouldn't worry about that too much. But yes, in the beginning, it is hard to get holidays off, and your beginning could be anywhere from 1 to 7, 8 years. Just depends on where you're based and what the seniority looks like in your base. What does the pay start out at? So when I started 7 years ago, I think it was like $23 an hour for your base pay, your hourly pay. I think now it's at $31 or $32 an hour. Is the interview hard? I wouldn't say, again, this is like a relative question. I wouldn't say the interview is hard. I would say the interview is extensive. When I say that, I mean, there are some people who applied and heard back in a week. Me, I applied and heard back in a week. I know people who applied and didn't hear back for 6 months. So it just depends how many people they're looking to hire, how quickly they're looking to hire, different things like that. But also, the interview is not just a, you know, we're going to bring you in for a quick interview, whatever. You know, most of the jobs you go to, or most interviews you go to for a job, you will meet with the manager or the regional manager, or whatever you want to say, you know, for that particular position. As a flight attendant, it's a group interview. It's about 3 parts, and that's what it was 7 years ago. I'm not sure exactly right now, but only one of those 3 parts was a one-on-one type of interview. Everything else was like a group interview. So you have to stand out, you know. For me, I have never really gone into an interview as, hey, I'll do this interview, we'll see if they like me, and we'll see if they hire me. No. If it's a job that I wanted, I went into the interview as I already have the job, with that type of confidence. And I believe that's what most airlines are looking for, those people who stand out, who have a certain presence. So yeah, there's about 3 parts. Only one of those 3 parts is a one-on-one. The other 2 is some type of group activity where they're watching you. So I hope that helps answer that question. So I wouldn't say it's hard, but I would say that it's extensive and it's a lot different than any other interview that I've ever done. Can you pick your schedule? This is a yes and no answer. Again, everything goes off of seniority. So depending on what you're trying to put on your schedule will depend on your seniority. When I say that, I mean like at my seniority, I'm able to hold Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday if I wanted to, right? So I can hold every Friday, Saturday, Sunday off if that's what I wanted. That's at 7 years. I would say I was maybe 2 years in, 2.5 years in, based in Detroit, where I was able to hold maybe 2 weekends off, but then shift things around to create the schedule that works best for me. Now, sometimes I wasn't able to move my trips. Sometimes people didn't pick up my trips. There's a lot of different variables that go into moving parts, basically, that go into creating the schedule that works for you. So when I say yes, you can pick your schedule. That means that if you're at a lower seniority, a lot of times there are ways to swap out trips that aren't very desirable trips. You are able to swap those out with what we call open time. You don't need to know about open time until you start working, honestly. You could swap with a friend or swap with another flight attendant. You could put it up on what's called our swap board, where people can come and take the trip from you. Say they have those days off, but they want to work, and your trip is a good trip, or a trip that they feel is a good trip, then they'll take the trip. So something like that. So that's what I mean when I say yes, you can choose your schedule. I mean, unless you get lucky, it's not gonna happen off rip. It's not gonna happen from the very start. Once you get a little bit of seniority under your belt, your schedule is a lot easier to maneuver. Can I do it part-time? Absolutely not. Not in the beginning, you cannot. Again, seniority. So if I wanted to work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and that's all I really wanted to work out the month, I can do that because I've been flying for 7 years. Sally might be able to do that. She's been flying for 5 years. George is not gonna be able to do that flying that 1 year. unless he gets very lucky. So this is not a job that you want to get or a career that you want to start, a lifestyle that you want to get into if you're looking for something part-time, because it's not going to happen in the beginning. Can you choose where you are based? Again, this is a kind of it depends. When I went through training, they gave us, I want to say 4 or 5 options of bases that were open for my airline. Only one of the bases was open, maybe let's say New York. That means the whole 200 are in that training class will be going to New York, right? Once you get in there, again, seniority, once you get into your base and you start working everything, there are opportunities for you to switch to different bases. Again, it's all based on seniority. But when I first started out in training, they did give us an option of, I think, 4 or 5 options. And of course, you choose the one that works best for you, where maybe it might be closest to where you live, or you might actually live in that base, which I live in my base now. But before, I lived in Grand Rapids, which is about 2.5 hours away from base. I did that for about a year maybe, and then I was like, no sis, like, because commuting can be a second job. So if you're lucky or blessed enough to have those options, then yeah, you would just be able to choose which base is closest to where you live. Would it be hard with kids? I think this goes back to your support system. It just depends on how good your tribe or your village or your support system is at home. I do know a lot of people who do this job with children. Yeah, I know a lot of people who do this job with children, so to make it work with their support system. And then, of course, like I said, as seniority goes on, your schedule will get better and better and better. So it just depends on if you have that support system that will stick with you, just stick it out with you until you're able to create the schedule that works for you and your family. Do I have to move? You do not have to move. You can commute. You can live in Timbuktu and be based in New York. You can live in Timbuktu and be based in Detroit. But all you have to make sure you do is make sure that you're in base before your trip starts. So say if I lived in Atlanta, right? And I don't want to be based in Atlanta, I want to be based in Detroit. So if my trip started at 9 a.m., I need to make sure that Kiera is in Detroit ready to go an hour before sign-in, right? Sign-in is at 2 p.m. Kiera needs to be in Detroit by 1 p.m., right? So that might not seem that hard, right? But for some people who live in those smaller cities, you might not have the option of so many flights to get you there. You might not have the option because of your seniority to have trips that start at a time where you would be able to fly in the same day, which means you would have to get a hotel the night before. A lot of flight attendants also have crash pads. I'll talk about that in part 2. So it just depends on if you're willing to put in the extra work, because commuting can seem like a second job. Okay, I did it only for 1.5 years or so. I can't remember exactly, but I think it was about 1.5 years. I only did it for, and I was only 2.5 hours away from base. So if I didn't feel like doing that for 2.5 hours away, there's a lot of people who probably feel the same, and that's why a lot of people do end up moving to base. But I do know people who live in Seattle who were based in Detroit, and that's just what it was. You know, they would back up their trip, so they would come in, work 6 days at a time, and then they would go home for 5 days at a time. You know, if that works for you, then absolutely. You know, if that works for you, then absolutely, that is something that you can do. You do not have to move. So most airlines don't even care where you live as long as you're in your base when you're supposed to be to work that trip. Am I too old? So no, the answer is no. There is no age limit as far as I know, as far as how old you can be to still be a flight attendant. I know when I was in training, I think I was like 24, 25, 23, something like that. And there were people in my training class that were like in their 50s. So if you're able to do it physically and you're able to do this mentally, then I don't think most airlines would care. Do I need a passport? Yes, you need a passport. If you're flying for one of the bigger mainline airlines, you definitely need a passport. If you're really thinking about applying, or if you have already applied, that you go get a passport right now. Because that's one of the first questions they're gonna ask you. They're gonna ask you if you have a passport, they're gonna ask you when it expires, they may even ask you for your passport number. So if I were you, I would get a passport. If you're truly interested in this career, that is something that you're definitely going to need. So yeah. Do you pay for your hotels and layovers? No, we do not pay for our hotels and layovers. We are at work. We are only in this city or place or whatever because our airline needs us to, so that we can work. So no, we do not pay to work. No, we do not pay for our own hotels. Can I be a flight attendant with tattoos? Yes. I have, you probably can see a little bit here, I have a whole sleeve on my right arm. I know a lot of flight attendants who have tattoos. Yes, you can be a flight attendant with tattoos. It is something that you do want to be honest about. If you get a interview and they do ask you, do you have any tattoos? Do you have any tattoos that normally show, anything like that, then yes, you want to be honest about it, because if they find out about it later, then you may be released from training. You have to cover them up at all times. For me, I just wear long sleeve shirts all the time. So if you're not opposed to that, and I know a lot of my guy friends who have sleeves as well, just wear their long sleeve shirts at all times, even in the summertime. So if you're one of those people who don't mind wearing long sleeve shirts all the time, me, I don't mind, because I'm always cold anyways, and because I want my tattoos. I love my tattoos. If that's something that doesn't bother you, then cool. If you have any tattoos, maybe here, anywhere that might be a little bit harder to cover up, there is a lot of different type of makeup that people use to cover up their tattoos all the time. So don't think that, oh, I have one right behind my ear, or I have one on my neck or whatever. Don't worry about any of that, because you can cover up with makeup. As long as you're willing to cover it up while you're working, I don't think that they would care. That's what I've been told. But yeah, there's plenty of flight attendants with tattoos. There's managers with tattoos. There's managers with whole sleeves, and you would just never know because they cover it up. Most airlines nowadays are very conservative, you know? So that goes for everything. If you have a tattoo down your calf, and you want to wear, say you're a lady and you want to wear skirts, you're gonna have to make sure that your stockings will cover that, and most of the time they won't, because nowadays a lot of the uniforms call for a nude color type of stocking or tight pantyhose, whatever you like to call them. And I know if I had on nude pantyhose, you're gonna be able to see the tattoos that I have on the back of my calf. I don't have them now, but I'm getting them next week for my birthday. You want to get some of that makeup that's specifically used to cover your tattoos. But again, it's not a problem. It's not something that can't be done. It's just, like I said, you just have to be on top of it, because it is something that is against the rules to have it showing. So yeah, I think that was our last question. I really hope this helps some of y'all. I had a lot of questions. Again, I will do a part 2. If you have a question that was not answered in this video, please do not forget to write it down in the comments below. If you're new here and you enjoyed this video, again, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment below. And all of my returning subscribers, thank you so much for rocking with me. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and write them down below. And I'll be doing the part 2 in about maybe like a week or 2. I'll give you guys some time to get all your questions in below, or hit me up on Instagram. If you're not following me on Instagram, come on now, y'all. Follow me on Instagram. Again, thank you guys for joining me today with this video. Again, don't forget to comment down below, and I guess I'll see you guys in part 2. Bye.